Hey guys, welcome back to this channel. If you're new, then welcome to this channel. I hope you guys are really having a great day. Well, today we are going to learn all about frameworks. Well, what do you guys think? What is a framework? Well, a framework is actually a collection of modules or packages that helps in writing web applications. Like if you're a web developer, you have to use a framework which really makes your job easier. And when working with frameworks, we don't have to worry about the low-level details. You don't have to worry about protocols, sockets, or thread management. Framework is the one which will take care of all the stuff. You just have to focus on your code, just have to focus on your functionality. Yeah, I hope you guys understood what is a framework. Like for example, you are a web developer and you don't know anything about framework and you sat in front of the VS Code or your favorite editor and you started creating your own code. You created your HTML file, the basic file, you created your CSS file, you created your JavaScript file, you created all these three interesting files and you're just going to manage. And this is just as a beginner, it will be easy for you to manage. But when you're designing a huge website, which will be having a bunch of web pages where you have to manage a bunch of HTML files, a bunch of CSS files, and even JavaScript files, and sometimes you even have to manage the database which is at the back end, and you have to work on the front end at the same time. Well, if you do that on your own manually, it will really make things complex for you to understand those structure, the entire layout that you created. But when it comes to frameworks, it will give you a basic structure for a website that you want to design. You just have to reuse the code which is already there in the framework, and you are going to create your own applications, you're going to create your own design, development, everything. Best example is Django, because it will help you out in managing the backend stuff where it will give you a database and it will give you the entire routing structures. Basically it will give you everything. You just have to go there and you just have to write your own code. It makes our job easier than before. Why is framework important? Well, this is really an interesting question because frameworks automate common implementation of common solutions. It will give you the things which we use mostly, and this enhances developers to focus more on application logic rather than the basic routine processes. You'll be focusing on just on your code rather than other things, rather than other stuff. When it comes to web development, frameworks are really important because when it comes to websites, when you're building a huge application, something like that, in order to manage, you need a framework which helps you in making lives easier for web developers and by providing with a framework for developing applications. And they provide common patterns in a web application which are really fast, reliable, and even easy to maintain. Okay, why we use a framework? Because it is really easy to reuse code for common HTTP operations. When it comes to HTTP operations, at the time, you don't have to write the code again and again. You can just reuse the code which is already there in the framework, and they structure projects so that other developers with knowledge of the framework can easily maintain and build the application. Let me give you a best example. There is a website which actually built using this Django framework. Like after 6 months, you have to update that, right? That Django framework. How can you update that? You can update that only when you know the Django framework, right? When you have knowledge on that particular framework, then it can be easily maintained and you can build the application. So you don't have to learn everything from scratch. You just have to understand the framework and just go with the flow. Update those applications if you're the one who gave you the job, like who got the job to do that. Well, here we have some cool advantages of framework. There are many cool advantages of using a framework in a project, especially when building a big website or a big software. Then at the time, these frameworks are really open source. These are free to use. These are actually comes with good documentation which shows step-by-step process in the way of using those frameworks. If you're a beginner, you can just go to that documentation and learn everything from scratch, and you can just use them. The frameworks are really efficient, they are safe, and they are integrated. They basically provide you all the tools which are needed for the development of the website. But here we have actually two types of framework, which is micro framework and which is full stack framework. When it comes to micro framework, it is a really, a simple and easy to use framework. It is a good choice for small applications. When you're developing small applications, and at the time this micro framework gonna help you. They use it for HTTP request or response. So micro framework is really simple and easy to use, and here we have some cool examples. Here we have Bardell for Python, ExpressJS to Node.js, Flask for Python, Spark for Java, and Lumen for PHP. So these are the basic examples for micro framework that we use in real life. So here we have full stack framework. When it comes to full stack framework, if you are a fan of web development, if you are a web developer, then you must know what is a full stack, which is basically a combination of front end and back end. So at the time, there are also the frameworks which provides you the tools which are required for front end and back end. So those kind of frameworks are called full stack frameworks. Well, these kind of frameworks are really complex and does the heavy lifting. Like, these are a bit heavy. It can be used to make any application. Using these full stack frameworks, you can make full stack websites, and it provides libraries, model engines, database management, etc. Basically the tools that you need for a full stack web development. So here we have some cool examples. We have seen this before. We know Django in Python, we know PHP, Laravel, and we know JavaScript in Angular. These are the basic examples for full stack framework, which are really famous these days, which are people are really working on these frameworks. But you guys must know there is a little difference between this library and framework. Guys, library and framework, which is completely different. A library is a thing that you use when you're building an application. A framework is also a thing that you use when building an application. Obviously, you are using these two things to build an application, but there is a little difference between these two things. A library is less complex, and when you call a method from a library, you are in control. You're the one who is controlling that particular library. A library is a thing which contains some specific application. Like, for example, if you observe in my previous tutorials, I explained about Tkinter. I also explained you about Tkinter projects. We also made some interesting cool Tkinter projects. If you want, you can just go there and learn. But here the thing is, if you observe Tkinter, it is actually a library, and you are going to use a specific operations. You try to load those specific operations, and you are going to use that. While you're using that, you're actually controlling that library, but the library is not the thing which is controlling the entire application. The library is the one which is controlled by you. You are the one using all those predefined applications, predefined operations that you have. But when it comes to framework, it is really a bit more complex, and the control is actually inverted. Here, you are the one who will control, but here, the framework is the one which controls your entire application. Framework is the one which calls you to run the program. A framework contains the basic flow, the rest is built by the developer. A framework is actually, it will have all the basic tools that you need to develop. You just have to focus on your code, and that's it. So here we have some examples for library, which is OpenCV, Pandas, NumPy. When it comes to frameworks, Django, Laravel, and Angular. So these are some cool examples for libraries and frameworks. I hope you guys understood what is a framework and what is a library, and why we use these frameworks, and what are those real life frameworks, and how we use these frameworks in building a website. And yeah, I hope you guys learned something new and interesting today. If you liked the video, then hit that cute little like button. If you're new to this channel, then what are you waiting for? Just go there and tap the red button so that you guys never miss an update from us. And yeah, I'll be back with one more interesting video. See you in the next video.